Astrology is very good for learning about ourselves. And I just wanted to mention at the beginning of this that, everyone is interpreting astrology differently. So we have the celestial bodies, which influence us. We have every part of every planet within us. And we study the stars in order to understand ourselves better. And getting to the very bare bones of what that is one layer. And then we have the interpretation, which is another layer. And so everybody's going to go and cherry pick the information that is needed for them. And so, although I've been reading charts for many people over the years, I feel that it's necessary to do the work for yourself and get involved, because that layer of interpretation is so important in providing us with certain feedback. We can analyze how we're interpreting it and compare that to how other people interpret that same position. So just to start this off, feel free to contact me for a session where I can bring you through my methods on how to look at the charts. I like to juxtapose many different systems. So the Western, the Vedic, Genekeys, Human Designs, and the Mayan. I'm currently an expert at none, but have spent quite a bit of time looking into all of them. So you can contact me. There's information in the description of the video below, but I definitely recommend people that are truly seeking to gain information about themselves, to answer certain questions, and to assist them on their journeys, that they start exploring these systems and researching them, spending a certain amount of time. It could be just a month or 6 months. If you're in that place in your life where you feel like you need to really get to understand yourself on a better level because you've been confronted with certain challenges, or you're just looking to gain more insight into what makes you tick, then it's definitely worth exploring some of these systems and then observing how you interpreted them versus someone else, because that actually gives you more information about who you are than anything else. So today we're going to be exploring the North Node in Libra in the 12th house, which is my North Node. And I'm going to juxtapose a lot of that information onto in my Vedic chart, which is Rahu in Virgo in the first house. And the nakshatra is Chitra. So first, we'll just discuss briefly why we look, like what the North Star is, what the North Node is. And my interpretation is that it's the most natural result of all the previous points and positions that we've traveled through in our chart. So as esoterically, that we've traveled through on our soul's journey. And nature is always seeking to reduce force, to disperse it so that it can create balance. And this is where the concept of wholeness comes in, and bridging the yin and the yang in nature, and how that duality exists and plays out. So the North Node is the energetic configuration which nature determines as the natural unfoldment from where you currently are, given all of your planetary positions in your chart combined in this lifetime. And we can kind of look at it like the golden rule, or the 13th gate. The North Node is that next step forward and that next step in evolution on our soul journey. So to understand where we're headed, it's really helpful to know where we're coming from. And in this particular case, with North Node in Libra in the 12th house, the South Node is in Aries in the first house, at the opposite end of our solar spiral. So Aries rises with the sun. It's a cardinal sign, and it carries the fullest potential of the fire energy, within it. So just as the sun rising in the morning to greet a new day carries the potential of a seed that is going to burst forth, it has great power, right? And this is what allows it to sprout. And so its position on the equator at the time of the spring equinox is that transition from winter into spring, and you can just feel the power that comes with this sign. So it's not only full of potential, it's also filled with vitality from all the work that it's accomplished during the winter time, the preparing, and there's a kind of pressure that builds up. And then when spring comes, it just bursts forth and it's able to accomplish its tasks. So in astrophysiology, Aries represents the head, and we can imagine how headstrong it can be, often acting without the consideration of those around them. And its potent ability to conceptualize ideas and plans gives it a supreme sense of self, which is also why sometimes, we call Aries the god of war, and it's ruled by the planet Mars. And Mars is what gives us our drive, right, to accomplish our desires and goals. And Aries just takes this energy and puts all those goals into motion. So it's a very powerful sign, and it has been depicted as, Aries being seen as the priest of the East, while Libra is the priestess of the West. So Libra being at the opposite end, just after the sun sets, carries within it the potency of the dawn of a new night. Libra is ultimately the energy that brings into balance the night and day energies, because it can draw on all of the lessons of the day. After all of that potent energy has come into manifestation, there's a cycle where that manifestation lives itself out, and then we can gain wisdom as we look back in retrospect and analyze how to correct. So Libra is exactly in that position, and it's the energy that takes those lessons and all those intense energies and then prepares for the night, for the winter and the next season. Libra has been described as the energy of marriage and relationships due to its pivotal position, placement on within the seasons. And, although most business and practical matters occur during the day, right at dawn between 6 and 8, there can be a time of many social gatherings where the purpose is no longer practical, but rather celebratory. And so Libra can bring a sense of togetherness, lightheartedness, laughter, and beauty. And Libra is very well known for that, and very well known for all things pleasing, whether visually or sensually. And so this is a little clip that I took from someone that I thought wrote it out very well. Libra is the sign that governs interpersonal relationships in general. It is the bridge between the individual and society. After the organization established by Virgo, it is the process that the being goes through to analyze its behavior, exchange experiences and knowledge. So the individual starts to exist in the other as well when realizing what their interactions and partnerships can bring. Libra is the socialization of being and an energy that inspires a good sense of justice. It is the scales in balance. And so this awareness of self-identification through the other generates a higher sense of communion. That is part of a slow evolutionary process. Loving is nothing more than discovering in the other what we do not know about ourselves. So it is the rich exchange through these relationships that Libra starts to learn. And for those born under Libra, this pleasure of relating and uniting is even more special to them. And I think, that's because you have Aries, which is very self-centered, And um, the inward focus goes from Aries all the way to Virgo. And at Virgo, it starts to change. And at Libra, that change has manifested into more of an outward focus. But it's the first sign um, of outward focus. So it's still kind of in the middle between being very much focused on itself and then opening up. So Libra is the first sign that opens up. And then if you look at the chart and you go all the way around, Pisces would be the fullest expression of being outwardly focused onto the world. And that's why they're so connected. That's the 12th house energy. And they're so connected to the collective and to all these different realms, dreams, and different grids of consciousness. So Libra is right at that pivotal place. And Libra being in 12th house carries more of the energy of the opposite extreme, which is Pisces and the collective. So you have this kind of balance where Libra is still focused inwardly and starting to learn about itself through relationship, and that's being held in a container that is completely outwardly focused on a very high level with the collective unconscious and with dreams and all that. So Libra in relationships will often, Libra in the 12th house, when they're in relationships, will often be bringing this energy of the collective, of the subconscious, of the unconscious back into the relationships that they have. So it's kind of a tricky energy. And this is, I think the key is that, you know, Libra is associated with liberation and deliberation. And she can liberate you from the burdens of the day, but may also caution to prepare you for the night. So Libra seeks to bring the balance of things, and with that, a lesson on what too much self-indulgence can create. She is the season just after harvest, and so the time of year which holds like the most earthly abundance. And so there's a really interesting juxtaposition with Libra in the 12th house. And I think a lot of her concerns in terms of justice bridge very directly to the collective, to humanity at large. And you'll notice in the zodiac symbol for Libra, like within the symbol itself, there's the ancient symbol called Omega. And Omega is coupled with its counterpart Alpha. And when you read up on that, you understand that it's representational of the beginning and the end. So in a sense, Libra has the ability to return us to our eternal truths, and, you know, that which is beyond the scope of current cultural beliefs and modern notions of justice and fairness. So Libra is very, very much about bringing things to justice. And because Libra in this case is in the 12th house, there's also a finality to things. So oftentimes people with this placement will will be working on a sense of justice and bringing that into the world, and there will be a certain amount of closure. So whether that be in close relationships, in friendships, in community, in family and groups, or with the collective at large, with the public, the general public, there's going to be a sense of finality and sometimes closure. And, you know, endings always come with beginnings. So Libra brings endings, but also brings new beginnings. Libra is that energy which within us that seeks to understand. So understanding and wisdom being the closest to our divine nature of expression, it naturally connects us to the spiritual world. And then you have that coupled with the 12th house and relationships with people who have embodied this energy of Libra in the 12th house will bring you into a self-awareness within yourself, will bring you towards the divinity within yourself. And it's very much a sign that will promote valor, loyalty, and self-awareness by removing any self-delusions that the person has. So Libra in the 12th house can help you overcome your greatest fears and illusions by reflecting back at you what you need to see in order to start a new chapter in your life. The 12th house, going back to this spiritual energy in this placement with the 12th house, can be kind of felt like, if you can imagine, staying up all night, and that energy of Pisces in the 12th house is concentrated between 4 and 6 a.m. So if you've stayed up to that time, or if you've woken up early enough to be awake at that time, you'll notice how magical it is, right? The birds have started to sing their ancient songs, and the world can just be sensed as this mystical and poetic place. It's just very beautiful energy. So Libra being a sign that brings beauty, and Pisces in the 12th house bringing this very spiritual energy, it's kind of a very soul-soothing type of energy. And, it connects to the morning star, Pisces rising between 4 and 6. Venus is rising at the same time. And so this energy suits her very well. And then right after that, the energy moves into Aries. So there's this beautiful finality to things and to the night. And all of this mystical and magical energy gets embodied. And then boom, the next constellation is Aries. And it's just like everything gets concentrated. And then it can be expressed in an Aries fashion. So I wanted to overlap Libra in the 12th house with its Vedic version, which is Rahu in Virgo in the nakshatra of Chitra. And this can be seen through our understanding of what the Chitra Nakshatra represents. The way its lesson is described is that it is a dense form that we must chip away at to reveal our gifts and dharma. This Chitra itself is currently ruled by Libra, so again there's this energy of beauty and values which highly comes into play with this nakshatra. The idea that we must move through life attempting at chipping away at all those things that prove to not be part of our value system really comes to the forefront. This soul work brings us to a place of culmination where we are living and acting in accordance with our most cherished values, and thus having that reflected back at us and onto the world. So Rahu being in Virgo represents like the hard work to get there. And in this sense, Virgo is also a natural healer. The Virgin constellation has much healing abilities. And this is can be used to chip away at all that doesn't, all that is superficial in a sense, or all that is coming from a lower place of awareness. And so Virgo's energy can be used to heal thyself on the road to freedom from all these superficialities. And it's ruled by Mercury, so there's a strong potential to create like an internal healing system to remedy wounds that may be embedded in the psyche from previous lives, or however you want to look at it, childhood, buried within the bloodline, that may be encountered when we embark on ancestral healing and move through the alchemical process, or otherwise described as, the ascension process that souls go through when they incarnate into human form. So there's a lot of potential to do that for the self with Rahu and Virgo, especially if you're on a healing or a spiritual journey here. And there's a lot of potential to bring that to others. So the reason why, I focus on describing like what can be buried in the bloodline, and often use that term in my work, for those that have been following my work for the last decade, is that when we have certain thoughts, those thoughts create a chemical reaction in the brain and then instruct the body and instruct the organs, right? So when we talk about the metaphysical reasons for illnesses, this is what we're discussing. And so when we're dealing and we're interacting with ourselves and with other people, there's going to be a synthesis between the interaction that we're having with ourselves or with others. And that interaction is going to create an internal dialogue. And that internal dialogue is then going to instruct the body, right? So our ancestors did this. They had certain interactions based on what they were experiencing culturally, whether it was during wartime or whether it was during a very peaceful time. We can tap into all these different parts of ourselves because ultimately we have the most ancient cells in our body, like cells that haven't died since the beginning of time. So we can tap into all these different layers. And what we're trying to do in this lifetime is to come into balance and in harmony within ourselves and our relationships, so that the thoughts that are being produced and the narratives around those relationships are nourishing the body. This sounds simple, but this is a big task. And I think it's really crucial that people understand this process because, if we're having a business interaction or an interaction with a lover or a friend that has gone awry, the narratives that we start speaking about what's going on is going to produce chemicals, right, that are going to instruct our organs, that can make them ill or that can increase their health. And so we're looking to fine tune that process in the time that we're living right now. Like, we want to bring about a renaissance, a spiritual renaissance of this higher way of living and being with each other. And so we can analyze things from a place of detachment. And if we're analyzing without the emotion, it's not producing the same chemicals in the body. But as soon as we start having a negative narrative, and I've observed this in myself, and I'm very strict about this now because we learn as we go. And like a few years ago, I would just be, angry at different situations, and then I would be having this narrative with my boss or with, different people in my life, and that was just, you're informing your subconscious mind. Whatever narrative you're having in your mind, you're informing your own subconscious mind. to send that message to your body and to produce those chemicals. So we can't really get away from ourselves in that sense. And everybody has to take responsibility for their thoughts. Not for the other necessarily, right? It's for the self. And so I'm very strict now with what kind of narratives I'm going to engage in, and also interacting with Libra in the 12th house. We're bringing about like a synthesis. Each time we come into contact, two cells come into contact with each other, there's going to be an exchange. And we have to really weigh, does that exchange meet our values? Does that exchange produce positive chemicals in my body to nourish my cells, to nourish my organs? And if not, then we have to look at why and what is producing that, right? And then do the shadow work, which I realize now at the age that I'm at, not everybody is going to do the shadow work. And it really depends as well on all of the planetary positions that are in their chart. Some people are just more inwardly focused, and some people are more outwardly focused, and then that will bring about certain challenges. But gaining control of our mind is definitely key. And I feel that Libra in the 12th house as a north node can really assist a person in gaining like a greater awareness of that in terms of relationship and what that produces. And then that allows the person to really gauge where they should put their energy. And Rahu in Virgo is bringing this energy to do that work, bringing the abilities and the skills. So moving on, this reconfirms the 12th house energy of endings and moving beyond the more mundane and superficial aspects of life into a deeper connection with the self and with each other, and fine-tuning. And the 12th house can offer, others and the self illusions. And this is where we begin to fine-tune. And so that we may chip away at them to find the jewel hidden beneath. So the Nakshatra Chitra is described as the shining one, and its deity is Tavashtar. So it's the celestial architect of the universe. And this 12th house energy comes back in through this representation of being able to create illusions with the self or with the other, and then chipping away at those illusions to find to really hone our craft and perfect our mission here. In Human Designs, this channel is described as, it's the channel 23 to 43, entitled Structuring. And it's described as genius to freak. So it has that energy where it's chipping away and it's going through this process of trial and error to really, really perfect its craft. So both of these placements speak about taking a back seat from the limelight and letting the irritants of life lessons transform the grain of sand into a pearl. And it's about working behind the scenes to create something meaningful that is lasting and has true value to the world. So Rahu in Virgo in the Nakshatra Chitra in the first pada is really about learning. It's like they describe it as the shining one, but in the mythologies, if you go into it, like they describe the person that had this chitra, like the energy of it, was someone who was too shiny to marry. And so if you go and you look at the negative traits of, like, if someone has this in their sun, you might notice that they're someone who is very, very vain, because this Libra energy, which is in that chitra, is like, it brings out the desire for beauty. And the desire to project beauty. And so, so the whole goal is to become less shiny, to find the gem within. This is kind of like paradox, but it's like you become less shiny to find the gem within. And this is actually similar. I just put out a video on the Ashlesh Nakshatra, and within the Ashlesh Nakshatra is described that the person gets to really master that nakshatra by protecting itself. And like the pearl, it releases a certain chemical to try and get rid of the irritants, which is the greenest sand, try and get rid of the irritants of the world. And by protecting, through the process of trying to protect itself, a pearl grows within. So this is the skill of protection plays a key role in soul development. And every nakshatra or celestial configuration that a person has will offer a different way that the person can accomplish their own development and soul growth. So that is why knowing yourself is key, and understanding that no two people are alike, right? This permits ourselves to focus and understand the difference between, like, if we're comparing ourselves to someone else, then for someone else the method itself of protecting might seem ridiculous, and then you have, for these two nakshatras, like, this is actually what allows them to bring forth their gift, and without that they can't do what they're here to do. So everyone is going to have a different methods that work best for them, and knowing what your methods are to bring about the greatest potential is part of doing this work and studying the stars and studying your astrological placements and how different planets are influencing you. So the more we know ourselves, the less likely we are to fall into the traps of, projecting our needs onto other people, whether through completely subconscious ways of, believing that we're assisting them, or completely narcissistic ways of not wanting to face our own fears and traumas. So this chitra is a method for honing our craft, right? And it's slow and steady, and it's work that needs to be done in solitude to create something beautiful. So I found that really interesting because Libra in the 12th house, has this energy again. It's sort of reconfirming itself, where there is an interaction with the outside world, and there is an interaction with the outside world, but yet at the same time there's a very strong 12th house energy, which brings us back to bridging the collective and going into spirit. And in order to do that, there's a certain amount of needing to be alone and to connect with that energy and to process on that level. So for those seeking to understand the nature of Ashlesha, I just wanted to mention this, and also just understanding the serpent energy from my last video. I recommend going to watch The Truth and the Way of the Serpent from part 1, from the Way of Tahuti. It's such an impeccable piece of work, because there's so much misinformation on the serpent. Okay, so carrying forward, we have Chitra people slowly chip away at the coal to get to that, through the contemplation and all the hard work, to be able to manifest what they need to manifest in the world. And Rahu in Virgo in the first house in the nakshatra of Chitra people, do something like this can be very beneficial. Like reading astrology is a good activity because it allows the person to connect with the outside world and relate to people, but still from an inward focused perspective. So oftentimes, people with this placement will be the people who won't necessarily, like there will be inventors, architects, creators, and they won't necessarily take the front stage and the limelight. They're going to be the people who are going to really work behind the scenes and hone their craft and perfect their craft, and then release it out to the world from behind the scenes. And that's how they contribute to the humanity's evolutionary process. So this is kind of why over the last decade I've continuously scrubbed my YouTube channels, and I sometimes make a joke that I should offer a course on how to impact the world with the least amount of exposure possible. But this is being very much in the energy that we're supposed to be in, which is not being the shining one or not being too shiny, and really taking the back seat and really working hard to perfect the craft and to find joy in the process of perfecting the craft. Learning to be in integrity with one's path, to align desires with values so that life may become more enjoyable. So just like, the Varna for this nakshatra is to be in service. And this juxtaposes with so many other descriptions and placements, all the way from my Mayan chart, Genekeys, Human Design. And that's how I like to look at all the different systems together, because you can really see what's extra highlighted, and that just confirms itself to the point where, it's easier to feel a strong confirmation on moving forward and really accepting that energy and knowing that it's a part of you, and that being in, following the kind of the rules and how the energy is going to unravel most appropriately saves a lot of time and energy and a lot of problems. So I juxtapose, so the nakshatra, this nakshatra, the Varna for this nakshatra is to be in service. And so just like my last video where a Shlesha shows up in my human design chart as one of my main channels, which is 05 to 15, rhythm, which is the channel of tantric energy, nature, cycles. So does Varna show up here in my Genekeys as my life work, being under line 4, which is service to humanity in the realm of understanding and forgiveness. And the life purpose in my same Gene-Key chart is insight and epiphany under line intent. So to have clear intentions and to manifest great insights requires doing the integration work, right, on all these different levels, doing the shadow work, understanding subconscious drives, motives, essentially individuating ourselves based on a real understanding of the self and the truest values inherent within the soul's core motivating drive. And Virgo is a lot about communication. So for me, I found it expression. Like this is where I'm honing my craft through writing and through building structures. And so it's kind of like that architect, and then so there's a lot of communication energy. And to do this, to get to the truest expression of this placement, Like the individual is going to be required to encounter the false self reflected back at them through that 12th house energy, you know, through dreams and illusions, and the illusions we encounter in our relationships in the world we find ourselves engaged with. Like this is a big part of coming into this energy and understanding what it is, and working with it, you know, is there's going to be all these different imprints, and we're having to see that where those imprints overlap, like where the illusions overlap with current energies and reality, with our relationships, with work, worldly views, you know. And once the bulk of that inner work is done and illusions get cleared out, or we get better at perceiving illusions faster, whether that's false masks that other people wear or the false masks that we wear ourselves, then we can really start to create something of value, right? With like we can liberate ourselves, transcend the illusions within ourselves and others, and refine our goals and intentions. And things become clearer and clearer, and then the insight that we can share is more aligned to that of the shiny diamond and the gold of consciousness, you know, rather than based on all of those illusions and whatever we didn't heal, our false notions of morality, you know, or based on cultural dogma or that sort of thing. So this process is a big part of this, and tying it back into Rahu and Virgo in the Nakshatra Chitra, Pada 1, there's that Libra energy there, and it's described as these people who have this placement, especially in their sun. You will see them be able to create great illusions within the world. So if you know, if we're talking about celebrities or people who are on the world stage and who haven't taken the back seat, because it's important for these people to take the back seat, then they have the potential of just creating very grand illusions through this energy, because it's all about, you know, you can use any force for good or for evil, for good or for malice. And so either working to remove the illusions to come to something pure within the 12th house energy, connection to spirit on the purest level, or people can use that energy to really create these grand illusions. And so these people are often seen as, you know, just being able to be different people all the time, and you're kind of like, who is this person? So so that's why, you know, shedding all of these different layers really helps us get to that pure place where we're able to be of service to humanity and bring something forth that is of value and has purpose and is lasting. And so if you look, you know, if you're looking to make a big decision about something or connect to those deeper spiritual aspects in yourself, connecting with Libras in the 12th house are the perfect people that will help you get there. But I think this is pretty good wrap up for today. I recommend studying your main planetary signs and their respective houses, along with any aspects, before fully exploring your North Node or Rahu position, because it's going to make a lot more sense. And, you know, if you calculate just within a basic chart, there's 40 positions to look at, right? 40 aspects in a basic Vedic chart. And they're all like layered on top of each other. And those energies might, you know, it can kind of seem like confusing, but if you go about it in a systematic way and you really look at you know, your sun and then your moon, and keep on and learning about the planets and the placements, starts to make a lot more sense. And this whole work, as I mentioned at the beginning, is all about making your life easier, in the sense where you're still going to face challenges, but the way in which you interact with yourself and with those challenges is going to change over time the more you know yourself. So there'll be less cognitive dissonance, there'll be less confusion, and you'll really be able to start to come into a place of wisdom in understanding that, everyone doing this work for themselves is going to eventually bring beautiful chemicals into the blood, right, to heal the body and to heal the planet. So I'm wishing everybody a wonderful March. And if you want to contact me, you can go to inspiringplayfulevolutions.com. I also have a blog site, storytellingforourtimes.com. And on my Inspiring Playful Evolutions website, you can click on the service link, Ancient Systems, to book a session. So that's it. Talk to y'all soon.